My life took a dramatic turn when my girlfriend, Lisa, told me she was pregnant. Until that moment, everything seemed to be going smoothly. We had been together for about a year, and Lisa was always the energetic, fun-loving partner I adored. We shared many happy moments together, and I thought I knew her well. One day, however, Lisa's demeanor changed. She called me up and said, "Jake, we need to talk." I knew from experience that this phrase usually heralds trouble. I expected her to bring up something trivial, maybe how I forgot to buy her favorite smoothie or some minor relationship hiccup. But when she sat me down, her expression was grave, as if she was about to share earth-shattering news. "I'm pregnant," she said. My mind went blank. Pregnant? I was in shock. I stammered, trying to process what she had just told me. The implications of her statement began swirling in my mind, and a mix of panic, anger, and confusion set in. We had always been careful, so how could this happen? My thoughts raced as I struggled to form a coherent response. Instead of reassurance, she immediately launched into a discussion about the future, weddings, families, and responsibilities. The pressure was immense. Lisa looked at me expectantly, as if she believed I should be overjoyed and ready to dive into marriage and parenthood on the spot. I had never even considered the idea of getting married this early in our relationship. Still, I felt guilty, caught off guard by her serious tone. She seemed so composed, as if she had already mapped out our entire future. The very next day, Lisa escalated the situation further by giving me an ultimatum: we either get married, or she would end things and tell my family and friends about the pregnancy. That was a heavy blow. The thought of my family finding out I had gotten someone pregnant before marriage filled me with dread. My parents held traditional views, my mother would be heartbroken, and my father would be furious. I could practically hear my friends' relentless teasing in my head. I felt trapped and pressured, like a puppet in Lisa's game. But something about Lisa's behavior didn't sit right with me. The timing of her news and the way she delivered it felt rehearsed. My instincts were screaming that something was off. Still, I was torn. What if she really was pregnant? How could I ask her to prove it? I felt like I was standing at a crossroads, unsure of what path to take. The situation escalated when Lisa began to involve my friends in her narrative, painting me as irresponsible and unwilling to take responsibility for my actions. This was infuriating. She was playing the victim while manipulating my relationships to her advantage. The pressure mounted when she threatened to inform my parents if I didn't act quickly. To complicate matters, Lisa organized a dinner with my parents, an event that felt less like a casual gathering and more like a strategic maneuver. During dinner, she casually dropped the bomb that she envisioned a big, loving family in her future. My mother lit up at the prospect, instantly eager to discuss wedding plans. I sat in stunned silence, feeling like my entire life was being hijacked right before my eyes. As the dinner progressed, I became increasingly aware that Lisa wasn't just manipulating me, she was orchestrating a complete takeover of my future. The more she spoke, the more I felt like an unwilling participant in a play I hadn't auditioned for. I didn't know how to speak up against her narrative, especially since I had no concrete evidence to refute her claims. I was in a precarious position. If I called her out, it would be my word against hers. That dinner marked a turning point for me. I began to realize that everything was not as it seemed. My instincts told me that this whole situation was more of a setup. I usually trusted people, but Lisa's behavior had raised too many red flags. The shaky foundation of her story started to eat away at my trust. Frustrated and desperate for answers, I decided to take a step that felt almost theatrical. I hired a private detective. I knew that I couldn't confront the situation alone, and Googling how to determine if my girlfriend was faking a pregnancy wouldn't suffice. I needed someone with experience, someone who could investigate without raising suspicion. The detective I found was an old-school type, complete with a trench coat and an air of authority. He listened to my story and immediately got to work. I explained everything: the unusual timing of the pregnancy, the manipulative dinners, the way Lisa had been controlling the narrative around our relationship. He didn't say much, but the look on his face conveyed understanding and determination. With the detective on the case, I felt a glimmer of hope. I wasn't alone anymore, I had someone who could help me uncover the truth behind Lisa's claims. The sense of dread that had consumed me began to dissipate as I prepared to confront the reality of my situation. Little did I know, the truth would turn out to be more shocking than I ever could have imagined. The waiting was excruciating. Each day, I found myself on edge, grappling with my doubts, while Lisa acted as if everything was perfectly normal. She often brought up baby names for the future, while I sat there, consumed by the fear that this was all just an elaborate charade. Then, a few days later, the detective called me. His tone was grave, too serious for my liking, and I met him at a dingy diner, filled with anxiety. I half expected him to reassure me, to tell me that my suspicions were unfounded, that Lisa was indeed pregnant. But when he slid a thick folder across the table, my heart sank. The contents inside were shocking enough to make my stomach drop like I was on a roller coaster. Lisa wasn't pregnant, not at all. It was a complete ruse, just as I had feared. I sat there in that dingy diner, my hands clammy, my heart racing, fully aware that I was about to uncover the depth of her deception. I had long suspected that Lisa was involved in something shady, but I never imagined it would be this serious. The detective detailed her elaborate scheme piece by piece. For starters, the pregnancy test she had shown me was fake. She didn't simply buy one from a store and hope for a positive result, instead, she had ordered a counterfeit positive test online. Who goes to such lengths? And those documents she showed me, claiming they were from her doctor visits, they were all forged. She had meticulously crafted a narrative so convincing that it had fooled not only me but also my friends and family into believing she was genuinely pregnant. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was not merely being manipulated, I was a pawn in her twisted game. Every single moment, from her tearful announcement of the pregnancy to her heartfelt declarations about wanting a big family, was part of a grand con, and I had fallen for it completely. But it got worse. As the detective continued his investigation, he uncovered that this wasn't Lisa's first time running this scam. She had pulled the same trick on multiple men before, each time with a calculated plan: fake a pregnancy, force the guy into marriage, and then clean him out during the divorce. It was a well-oiled operation, and I was just the latest victim in her scheme. Fury coursed through me. I wasn't just angry about the deception, I was enraged that she had played me like a fool. I had been so close to walking right into her trap, but not this time. I resolved that I would not be her next victim, the man left broken and financially ruined in the wake of her manipulation. This time, I would take control. With the truth now weighing heavily on my mind, I knew I had to be strategic. Revenge needed to be executed with precision. I began to play it cool, acting as if I was still grappling with the idea of her supposed pregnancy. I would casually mention that we needed to talk about our future or that I was still processing everything. Meanwhile, I was mentally preparing for my payback. Lisa, confident in her role as the perfect fiancée, had no clue that I was on to her. She continued to ingratiate herself with my family and friends, portraying herself as the ideal soon-to-be wife. I watched with disgust as she maneuvered her way into their good graces, but I remained patient, keeping my true intentions concealed. Every time she attempted to guilt-trip me into planning the wedding, I would smile and nod, all while inside I was laughing at her naivete. She truly believed she had me trapped, oblivious to the fact that I was devising a plan to turn the tables. I kept in touch with the detective, gathering more information about her previous scams. I started documenting every lie and manipulation she engaged in, building a case, not for the courts but for her own downfall. I was preparing to dismantle her life right before her eyes. If she wanted to play dirty, then I could play even dirtier. And the best part? Lisa was completely unaware of what was brewing beneath the surface. She thought I was still in turmoil, panicking over the idea of impending fatherhood, while she carried on with her charade. Little did she know that I was about to flip the script, and she would soon find herself scrambling to maintain her facade. The day I had been anticipating finally arrived, and I was fully prepared to confront the situation at hand. Lisa, ever the schemer, orchestrated a lavish dinner at an upscale restaurant, inviting my parents, close friends, and essentially everyone who played a significant role in my life. She was positively radiant, convinced that tonight would be her crowning moment. In her twisted mindset, she believed I was going to propose, thereby ensnaring myself in her trap for eternity. But I had very different plans. As we settled into our dinner, the atmosphere was filled with laughter and smiles. Lisa was laying on the charm, acting as though she was already part of the family, while my mother beamed at the prospect of having a grandchild. My friends, oblivious to the underlying tension, seemed completely taken in by her performance. However, I had something far more impactful in mind. Halfway through the dinner, I stood up, causing a hush to fall over the room. Every eye was on me, and Lisa's grin widened, perhaps thinking I was about to propose. I made direct eye contact with her, noting the flicker of uncertainty in her expression, but she maintained her facade, fully expecting a romantic speech. Instead, I announced, "I have something important to share with all of you." At that moment, I revealed the truth. I pulled out a carefully prepared stack of evidence that I had been gathering over the previous weeks. The first item was Lisa's fake pregnancy tests, irrefutable proof of her deceit. Next, I displayed her forged doctor's notes, documents that were supposed to validate her fabricated story. And then came the piece de resistance, photographs taken by a private detective showing her pulling the same scam with multiple other men. It was a shocking revelation of her as a manipulative gold digger, a twisted mastermind weaving a web of lies. The silence in the room was palpable. My parents appeared frozen, jaws nearly touching the floor in disbelief. My friends looked as if they had been blindsided by a freight train. But Lisa's reaction was the most telling. She went from self-assured to ghostly pale in mere moments. As she attempted to interrupt, sputtering excuses about misunderstandings, I refused to let her evade the consequences. I systematically laid out her entire scheme, detailing how she had been lying from the very start and that her entire charade was a calculated setup. As I spoke, I watched her world collapse around her. With every piece of evidence I presented, the illusion she had constructed began to shatter. Her eyes darted around the room, desperately searching for an escape route, but there was none to be found. The game she had been playing was over, and everyone present was fully aware of her true nature. Witnessing the transformation of her confident demeanor into sheer desperation was incredibly satisfying. By the time I concluded my revelations, Lisa had nothing left to support her false narrative. There were no more lies to hide behind, no tricks she could employ. She stood exposed in front of everyone she had tried to deceive. After that fateful night, Lisa disappeared from my life as quickly as she had entered it. It was as if she had evaporated, taking her web of lies and fake pregnancy with her. Her reputation was utterly destroyed. There was not a single person left in our circle who did not know the truth about her. In our tight-knit community, information spreads like wildfire, and she would never be able to pull off such a deceitful act again. My family, bless their hearts, finally recognized Lisa for who she truly was: manipulative, deceitful, and toxic. The look of realization on my mother's face when she understood that the sweet girl she had been so supportive of was nothing more than a fraud was priceless. As for my friends, they still talk about how I managed to deliver the truth bomb of the century. Personally, the satisfaction of dismantling her elaborate house of lies was unparalleled. There's an unmatched thrill in watching someone who believed they had complete control over her suddenly realize they were the one caught in the trap of their own making. I didn't just dodge a bullet, I sidestepped a nuclear disaster. From this experience, I learned some crucial lessons. Trust is not something to be given lightly, it must be earned. Furthermore, if someone is attempting to manipulate you, it's important not to fall victim to their games. Eventually, their web of lies will ensnare them. You just have to ensure that you are the one holding the scissors when it happens. In the end, I emerged from this ordeal with a clearer mindset, a tighter circle of trusted friends, and a newfound skepticism towards pregnancy tests. But ultimately, the biggest victory was avoiding